Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Secret Society of Strangers podcast. I'm Lee, here with Josh and Jen, as always.
What it do?
Tonight,
It's my favorite intro.
it suits you.
It
fits you.
does. It's just
Yeah.
Well, that's about all the wackiness we're going to have for the rest of the evening because tonight
super
is
serious.
super serious. We're getting biblical. Tonight,
Getting Old Testament on your asses.
We're covering the Book of Enoch. And if you don't know what that is, you're in the perfect place because we have a really robust script to get through to tell you all about it.
It's a real thick story.
Yep. Before we do that, as always, if you guys are enjoying what we're doing, if you guys want anything in particular, subscribe, comment, let us know. We're always open to ideas. All right, you guys ready to get into this?
Yeah.
All
Let's
right,
do it.
let's go.
Society.
Strangers in society.
Strangers on the internet.
The secret.
Strangers. Society. Welcome, stranger.
Secret society. Strangers.
Society.
Welcome to the Secret Society.
Strangers.
All right. So this whole thing starts, 1947. There's this young Bedouin shepherd named Ahmed. I'm going to butcher this. Dahib. I'm going to go with it. Was looking for, some lost goat. And for people that don't know what like a Bedouin is, it's pretty much like a person that just kind of lives like off the grid. They're usually like camel herders, sheep herders, kind of mostly like some sort of herdsman or herd person. And so yeah, this person was looking for a lost goat near the Dead Sea, and he was just threw a rock into a cave, and all of a sudden he heard like the sound of something shattering, and went inside, and dude found the Dead Sea Scrolls, like just on a whim, like one of the most important archaeological finds ever.
How many times do you think like his parents told him not to throw rocks? And now he gets to come home and he's like, yo, I threw a rock and guess what happened?
I found these scrolls.
Yeah. That's pretty lucky toss.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's extremely lucky. Looking for a rock that, not quite the grandiose way you would think that those scrolls would be found, but here we are, and I think we're all still glad that it worked out, no matter what. But yeah, I found copies of ancient texts, including parts of the Old Testament, and other mysterious works that had been lost to history, including the Book of Enoch, which previously had only been known to survive in Ethiopia.
Yeah, but before the dude discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls in 47, let's go back to 1773. There's this Scottish explorer named James Bruce. He wanted to be the first person to find the source of the Nile River, and I guess back then it was like a huge fucking deal, like, because it just might sound like a really mundane thing, like, oh, who cares about finding? Like,
Just walk to the end of the river, guy.
yeah, pretty much. It's like, okay, cool. Well, that's where that river starts and ends. Cool, whatever. But it was like just a massive race. It was like their version of the space race in 1773. Like everybody was trying to get to the source of the Nile. And so he spent over a decade in Africa tracing the Nile. And through his travels, he was in war-torn deserts. He became friends with several kings throughout Africa, and obviously made some enemies. And along the way, he fought some savage tribes and deadly disease. So this guy is literally like the explorer person that you picture in like old movies and stuff like that.
Like a real explorer.
Getting it. The real Indiana Jones, if you would. Minus the whip. So Bruce finally discovered a small bubbling, spot near a monastery in the highlands of Ethiopia, and then that was it. That was the birth of the Nile, this small little bubbling stuff. Like, boom. We would have thought that like that's the beginning of one of the most important rivers.
We had this conversation. Like, I ignorantly don't understand where rivers come from. Like in my mind, they all start at the top of mountains and are like glacier water. But
right.
I guess they come out of the ground too and start massive Nile rivers.
But yeah, so during his stay at the Ethiopian monastery, he saw old faded manuscript, and it was on display. Like it was just out there in one of their temples, and it was written in Gi, and it's ancient Semitic language used by Ethiopian Jews. So Bruce was told this book was the Bible, like not just it's just a Bible or variation of, like this is straight up
Bible.
right here, the word of fucking God.
Yeah. Which I find is kind of interesting all the way back then that they had already like established Christianity in Ethiopia, like to the point where these people think they have like the original Bible.
Right.
So it goes back 3,000 years, Judaism in Ethiopia. The Old Testament and the Quran tell of an Ethiopian queen named Sheba, who heard of King Solomon's wisdom and his wealth. So she decides that, like, she's super intrigued. She's going to go check this dude out. She goes to visit King Solomon. She realizes that all the rumors are true, and they are both mutually fascinated with each other. So Sheba bestows a bunch of gifts upon Solomon, and Solomon does the same to Sheba. Sheba leaves and goes back home, and then Sheba finds out that he is pregnant.
Damn. Came for a visit for the weekend and got pregnant. No plan B.
So the details otherwise around their meeting are pretty sketchy. No one really knows exactly what went on, but I think now we have an idea.
Well, obviously they fucked.
Yeah, it was just fucking and gifting. Fucking and gifting.
That's a lot of gifts. Oh, jeez. So yeah, so in the Old Testament and the Quran, that's where the story would end. But religious texts in Ethiopia go into far more detail. When the queen finally made it home, she learned Solomon gave her a son.
See? They get the best gift of all, kids.
Gift
So
that keeps on giving.
Right?
Yeah.
Their son his name was Menelik the first. So I don't know if there was consecutive Meneliks, but when he grew up, he returned to Jerusalem where he met King Solomon and his dad. He was like, "Yo, I'm here, Dad. What to do? You owe a bunch of child support, but whatever. We'll figure that out in court." But like King Solomon was so happy to finally meet his son that he just offered him the throne. He's like, "Yep, fuck that. You know, I'm well aware that I owe you all this child support, so just take this throne. Here you go, tradesies.
Inherit all my problems."
Pretty much.
That's true.
But Menelik was like, "Nope, not gonna do that shit," and he just chose to return home. But before he left, some of his men stole the Ark of the Covenant and brought it back to Ethiopia. So like, could you imagine just like, "Nah, I'm not gonna take your throne. I've never seen you before in my life. This is our first time meeting. I'm your son. I know you're super hyped about this, but I'm gonna say no and steal the Ark of the Covenant."
I think Menelik must have been friends with our friend John True Gordon, stealing that furniture on the sly.
There we go.
It's like, oh, this is a nice piece. This way, guys.
Come on, guys. Definitely not a small porch fire back there.
So, like we mentioned, there's a large Jewish population in Ethiopia. Ever since the Ark of the Covenant came back there, it's supposedly in a city called Aksum, right? Aksum, maybe.
We're gonna go with it.
Yeah, right. In a church called the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. And supposedly it's still there to this day. Like, that's where it's at.
I wonder, like, what happens if you look at it, not inside the box, but like just at the box in general. Like,
I don't know. I don't know what the, again, we'll do a whole episode. I'll do a whole deep dive on that and find out. But
Yeah.
see what's up with that. So let's get back to our boy Bruce. He was pretty fascinated by all this text that he was seeing, and he was pretty well-read guy, educated, because he's, your typical explorer badass. Like, obviously, I'm sure he was working with, the British Library and museums and, Indiana Jones, who knows. But he knew his scripture, so he was obviously a religious man, and these Ethiopian texts contained hundreds of stories that weren't in his version of the Bible. So you already have two conflicting Bibles. So the Ethiopian Bible, it contains about 81 books. The Catholic Bible removed 8 of these books and contains only 73. Also, the King James Bible is the one known to only have 66 books.
So the closer to modern day European it gets, the less information it has.
Right? I mean, could you imagine? It's
That's
crazy.
not
Like, I don't
shocking.
know what the original Bible said, or I guess the Dead Sea Scrolls said, but you can just imagine it's just been interpreted and translated throughout the centuries and just morphed and changed.
Giant
to,
game of telephone.
And then I'm sure it's gotten back in the day, medieval times, I'm sure people changed it for political reasons.
Well,
and
King
stuff.
James himself, yeah.
Right.
So, like we were just saying, Bruce could not understand why there was so much detail in the older text. People merely mentioned in his Bible had their full lives documented, and they also had their misdeeds and their families' lives documented. So, this was detailed manuscript about people that were barely mentioned in the Bible that he was familiar with.
So Bruce didn't understand why so much of the original Bible was removed, and then he did. He came across the Book of Enoch, and that pretty much just changed his whole, it was like a big light bulb went off. He's like, oh shit, this makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, totally agree with him there. So James Bruce, he knew that Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah. He was mentioned a few times in the Bible, but only in passing. And here now he has an entire Book of Enoch, 108 chapters worth of a guy that's only mentioned a couple of times in a couple of different places.
That's a long book, 108 chapters.
Yeah, you would think there was somewhere in there was some important information more than the first few chapters of the other Bible.
So James Bruce understood why the church wanted this book hidden, because it described heaven was not just a spiritual place, but is also a physical place that could be visited by men. And apparently that was just heresy to the Catholic and Christian church. So no mortal man is able to visit heaven and certainly turn and come back and tell a story like Enoch did. That was just unfathomable to these people.
Yeah, Enoch came back, but while he was there, he literally wrote everything he saw down.
Wouldn't you just, if you didn't have a cell phone or some way to take a picture of it, wouldn't you describe and write down everything you could if you went to heaven? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be fucking
that would be insane.
No words. I mean obviously.
Well, it's even crazy when they describe what angels look like. They've got multiple eyes and just giant wheels and stuff like that, pretty much. They're terrifying creatures.
Which makes you wonder.
Right? So the Book of Enoch vanished from history thousands of years ago, only to be rediscovered in 1772 by James. But while, the book was very interesting, it was dismissed by Muslims, Jews, and Christians and not considered canon to the Bible. And there's also other banned books of the Bible, like Mary Magdalene's books and a couple of other ones.
Yeah.
And then I guess Jesus went to India, and that's also banned.
And I guess the theory behind why Bruce didn't take it so seriously, and the church at the time when he found it wasn't too keen on jumping on board, was, it had been hidden away on a mountaintop in Ethiopia for how many thousands of years. How seriously important could it be to the Bible if they've been all right all this time without it?
Right.
And there were no other copies anywhere at the time, so they really were just not interested in amending the Bible.
Ethiopia kept it alive. They had seen it as the only Bible, And the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls gave us further fragments of Enoch's writings in Aramaic, showing that it was widely known in ancient Jewish communities.
These scrolls gave scholars a closer look at early apocalyptic beliefs and confirmed that the Book of Enoch influenced both Jewish mysticism and early Christianity. So it really just had them sort of looking at things in a different light.
Yeah, the scrolls were written before the destruction of the Second Temple and are mostly in Hebrew and Aramaic. They were written by an ancient Jewish sect, which is most often identified with the Essenes, whichever you like.
Yeah, that's a lot of S's.
The scrolls, like Josh was kind of alluding to, include fragments of every book in the Old Testament except the Book of Esther, which I'm not familiar with.
Very good one.
The Book of Enoch is a collection of texts that were comprised between 350 BCE and the turn of the era.
So like old as fuck.
Yeah, man. Like have you guys or anyone that's listening ever pulled up humanity's timeline? Like you can Google humanity's timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pull it up, you get just a timeline with all the major events on it, but you see like how close like the collapse of like the Alexandria Library is to like George Washington becoming the president. Like, and to think like, yeah, on a timeline, like these events are like this far apart, but for my mind to understand 350 BCE, I have no context.
Yeah, that's
like
so
how long ago is that?
super long. And like the earliest known example of an apocalyptic blend of Israelite prophetic and wisdom theologies is the Book of Enoch. And so it was part of the biblical canon used by the Ethiopian Jewish community, like we mentioned earlier. Beta Israel and Christian Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. I'm gonna confidently say that.
Go for it.
I was
If he's
proud.
wrong, someone correct him in the comments.
Somebody correct me, because
Yeah.
I am not a wordsmith. Linguist? That word.
I like wordsmith.
Both
The Book of Enoch was written during the apocalyptic movement that led to the Dead Sea sect. It was initially accepted as scripture by the Jewish and Christian communities, but was later rejected for just a couple of reasons.
Yeah, mainly it was inconsistent with the teachings of the Torah, and a lot of people even consider it, like you said, Josh, like just heresy. The fact that you can walk amongst God and the angels and come back as a mortal.
Right. And side note, I feel like Dead Sea Sect would be like a great goth metal band.
Yeah, that really is.
Or some
Yeah.
crazy pop punk
It would.
rock garage band.
Right, TM.
TM.
Yeah.
But so the Book of Enoch is also referred to in the New Testament. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 5, it says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And I guess the verse is part of the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus describes the Beatitudes, which are saying
Bible's
about
tough.
who is blessed and why in the Christian context. Meekness is about trusting God to win the battle rather than trying to win on one's own terms. I don't know, man. I like winning fights on my own terms.
Pause. Because
Time out.
this is something that came up, and I was going to save the question for someone that probably is involved in the church and knows the answer. But if Jen, you know the answer, maybe I'd be interested in knowing. So I was listening to a podcast,
Maybe.
and it was a priest who was an exorcist. But exorcism is really neither here nor there in this question. He was saying that we're all born, and our birth is the original sin, correct?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, like
Yeah,
our
I've
birth.
heard that.
Something, okay. So
Yeah.
you're baptized, or the person is baptized, then you become one with the Heavenly Spirit and all that. But he had mentioned that, like, in their theology or in the Bible, like, God has technically already won all the battles that could ever be. And it's like up to you in real time to keep your faith, like,
Correct. Free will. Yeah. So the point is, and the struggle is for Christians. If you're a Christian, you believe Jesus died for you. All your sins are forgiven. Not that you can just go out. I can't go out and kill someone and just be like, oopsie daisy. Can I get a pass on that one? We're still good, right? I mean, technically we could, but I would still be expected to face consequences here on Earth for that decision. And if I didn't repent for that, which would mean not just like oopsie daisy, I won't do that again, hee or fingers crossed behind my back or whatever. It would have to be true repentance, and that God always knows your heart, so He really knows if you don't necessarily mean it, you're really not sorry yet. So I'm using murder obviously as an extreme example, but you get the point. But yeah, so the point, is that I should not worry. As Christians, I shouldn't, be concerned with like our world is going to hell in a handbasket. I mean, concern to a point, but not to the point where I am fearful, hiding away, and like not communicating to people and making it a detriment, like to my mental health and my purpose here on Earth. Because in the end, if I drop dead as I'm talking to you right now, I'm guaranteed eternal life in whatever heaven is. Because at least in our church, we don't claim to ever say for sure, I mean, for all we know, hell is what we're experiencing right now on Earth.
Yeah, I've had that.
We create it for ourselves. We create it for ourselves, not that it's necessarily an actual place. But it could be, I don't know, but that's just how we would view it.
I just found it interesting. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. But in my mind, and not, I think this is like kind of an overlay of all the religions, and I think this should come up when we talk to our guests this weekend or next weekend. But it almost sounds like a built-in like self-responsibility kind of thing. Like your responsibility is yourself. Don't worry about like the bigger picture. If you're doing your job, you're faithful, you're a good person, you're going through life righteously, like it'll all work out regardless of the chaos around you.
Correct. My job is to show others grace as I would want to be shown grace. So that's keeping, the unnecessary anger and things like that, at a reasonable control. Can I get angry? Of course, we're allowed to feel all the emotions, whatever. But we all know when we just lose that control and it leads to negative outcomes, and then we feel extreme regret, and we can all look back to something that we wish we'd never said, done, etc. And the consequences that we had to face for that. So that's essentially, my job, not to judge. I know there's a lot of controversial, obviously, stuff in the Bible, but my view on that is kind of like what we're talking about right now. We have got a lot of translations over a lot of time, Greek, Hebrew, some Aramaic, all these things, languages that we don't even know. Was it misinterpreted in translation? We have no idea. So my takeaway as a Christian for me is I cling to, it's not my job to judge. I don't, so you do you feel like that is your life and that is the way you're meant to live your life. You do you, as long as you're not trying to kill me, murder me, something crazy, then I have no issues with you. I'm going to be a good human. I expect you to be a good human. And then that's how we float along. So that's how I view all of that. It's not my job to be crazy and picketing places and whatever, because Jesus wouldn't do that. He sat down with the people that our society loves to hate. So I get a little confused where people get confused, but yeah, so that's kind of my view on it. And I feel like Christianity itself is very simple. Be a good human. When you mess up,
I was just like, my thought was like, as I get older and as I become more responsible and take more accountability for myself, like I feel like I'm unraveling like religious fundamentals, like
Sure.
just like learning, like you were saying, like giving people grace. Like I am just now at 40 learning that like life is so much better if you just give people in your life grace and like understand everyone's got their struggle.
Absolutely.
And they're doing their
Yes.
thing. And like it's stuff we've all said,
yeah.
and you know, I said that when I was 20, but it didn't resonate the way it does now at 40, and I'm using it in application. But no, thank you,
Yeah,
Jen.
I mean,
I
it's
was
really
curious.
no, absolutely. And I just want to put an aside in. I think we're probably going to get there eventually with this, but I just feel like it's a good place to kind of insert it while we're talking about this. I've said before in previous, episodes that to me, this is all the Bible, our faith, Christianity, it's all supernatural. So I think that, like doing research for this episode, and then I even found a couple of podcasts that were Christians that were covering this, and they said this Enoch reading through had actually strengthened their faith. And I thought that's what I was thinking. I was like, this is actually, because this now makes so much more sense.
Yeah, when you have all the pieces, imagine that.
Yeah, exactly. So it absolutely, I thought that was just really cool. And like, really for me, for listeners don't know, I did a whole cancer battle thing a few years back, and I am the most anxious person in the world. It's my Achilles heel for life. I think it's like my thing.
I think I might give you a little bit of a little challenge on that one.
Well, yeah, we'll see. But here's the thing. So I had doom scrolled in my head, like, what if I got cancer? What if, I woke up and, my legs had fallen off? I mean, anxiety does some crazy things to your brain. And I've lived with that for so long. So I assumed what I would do if I got life-shattering news, that I would fall to pieces, and just cry and live on the floor with a dog or two, hopefully,
Always have
And
the dogs.
I did, and I did the exact opposite. I prayed one time, and I am no prayer warrior. I am the first to admit my mind wanders. It's a whole thing. And I was like, just don't let me fall apart, basically, is what came out. And I didn't. I slept like a baby throughout the whole 2 years of radiation, chemo, surgeries, the whole nine. It was amazing. And to me, that was supernatural. That was all I really needed to know, because I definitely, am I cured of anxiety? Let me be clear. Hell no.
I really just think
you're one of the worst things that I imagined.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my kind of supernatural, thing that cemented thing, but yeah.
Again, I think even when we were talking to our guests from the Astral Travelers Institution, like what you're saying right now is essentially just a different path than like I'm on right now. So like I have as I've vocalized many a time, have a hard time using the word God or religion or any of those, overarching names for this. But like I said, as I get older, I can't help but to like see the parallels in like a good, happy life and some of religious fundamentals. All of them, not just Christianity or Judaism. Like
Right.
all of them have that basic fundamental, hey, just be a good fucking person.
And pretty much, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly. I mean, all you have to remember is religion is man-made. Man created that. Jesus didn't create 85 denominations and this, that, and the other. We did that. We complicate things.
This is true.
We like to overthink. But
yeah, we'll get this back on track before we start a whole nother episode.
So there's another reference in the New Testament to Enoch, and I didn't know that. Like, I thought this was pretty interesting. So in Jude 1 verses 14 through 15, here, this is what it says. And Enoch also, the seventh son from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, The Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment upon all, and to convict all that are ungodly among them, all their ungodly deeds, which they have ungodly committed, and of all of their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. That is a lot of ungodlies, but you guys.
Yes, it is.
That is a lot. But yeah, I didn't know Enoch was the seventh son of Adam, so like he's like seventh generation of the first man. So there's a couple of main peculiar aspects of the Enoch Judaism whole thing, and here's a couple of them. The idea that evil and impurity on earth originated because of angels that had intercourse with human women and were subsequently expelled from heaven. So because they made the Nephilim, pretty much they were cast out of heaven because they helped humanity in a way. We'll get to that later.
I'm sorry. I just can't help but to like see the glaring red print that like somehow women are still the fucking problem.
Oh yeah.
Like just somehow they're still the start. Like they didn't do anything. They just existed and like are now like gonna cause cataclysm. Okay.
Yeah, it's their
I am
the apocalypse.
so sorry, women. I genuinely hate being a man in today's day and age.
So the absence of references to terms of the Mosaic covenant, which as the observance of Shabbat or the rite of circumcision as found in the Torah, and then the concept of the end of days as the time of final judgment that takes the places of promised earthly rewards. So yeah, there's a couple of like things that we've all heard about in a roundabout way. Yeah, it talks about the solar calendar in contrast to the lunar calendar used in the Second Temple. It's a very important aspect for the determination of the dates of, certain religious feasts. And then this one was pretty cool. It's an interest in the angelic world that involves life after death. So everlasting life, pretty much.
Sign me up.
Right? It's just your consciousness goes to a different realm. That's all it is.
Yeah. Well, we should be able to ask Enoch himself then when we get there.
Right. So now that we've got all, the history shit out of the way, you guys ready to get to Enoch's journey to the fucking celestial city?
Hell yeah.
Describe what heaven is supposed to be? Oh, man.
Like we alluded to earlier, when you actually read the text in the Book of Enoch, it's clear to see why the church may have been so against it. This is probably the first written example of what we could potentially call an alien abduction.
Ancient aliens.
It's the original story. So the story goes that one night over Enoch's village, there's this giant sound. It's not thunder, it's not wind. They describe it as a sound that like vibrates you and you can feel it. All the villagers are curious, so they start walking out of their homes. They look up and they see a giant ball of light. Obviously freak the fuck out. They're all very scared of what's going on. But the ball starts to slowly descend towards the village. And in that moment, Enoch hears a voice telling him not to be afraid. And then Enoch is accompanied by an angel named Uriel and taken to a celestial realm.
This all screams like alien abduction. You've got the ball light UFO, which we've all seen those kinds of UFO orbs.
Yup.
The no sound, but everything's humming and vibrating. And now you hear like some of these crafts make a weird low humming, like machine humming sound. And then they all just got abducted.
Yep.
Because then like in every abduction scenario, you hear them say, oh, well, the being told me not to be afraid.
They hear a voice in their head.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aliens.
I know, it's like Indrid Cole said the same thing.
See? Maybe he was
Great.
Uriel.
Dude, don't even start.
Mothman is Enoch.
Oh, God. It's a can of worms.
Right. All right. So he receives this invitation to heaven, but it's not what you might imagine. So in the book, he describes a journey that's both super surreal and almost overwhelming. I mean, like, I would be overwhelmed if I just got this invitation to fucking heaven. I'm gonna check that shit out. But yeah, obviously you're going to be overwhelmed. And he's taken through layer upon layer of celestial realms, and Uriel guides him through different levels of heaven, and each level is more intense than the last. So first he's taken through realms of light and fire, where he sees strange radiant landscapes that seem almost alive. And this, just him going through different levels of heaven and having Uriel as his guide, really reminds me of Dante's Inferno, where he's going through the different layers of hell, and he's got, I can't remember who is his guide.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
It rings true to a lot of things, even near-death experiences I've listened to, as like a lot of people describe being like shot through like time and space and like all these different realms rushing past them.
That would be crazy.
So he describes colossus gates made of light and gemstones with colors that shimmer and shift. The gates lead to a city that is unlike anything on Earth. It's filled with towers and massive pillars and beings that glow in a brilliance that he can barely look at. It's like he's trying to put something completely not known to him into words. So he calls the beings angels, and they're radiant. He says that they're not the winged beings that we often picture.
Yeah, and so he's just trying to like comprehend. His brain is trying to like, okay, I'm going to try to make sense of this, and also screams of every alien experience ever. I'm just trying to make sense of this.
Glowing lights, formless beings.
Yeah, and it's not just the visuals that Enoch described. He talks about sounds and sensations too. There's a constant musical hum in the air, like a vibration that he can feel within himself. He hears voices, they're like whispers from across time and space, hinting at the secrets of creation. That's why. He describes like the whole realm is alive, resonating with knowledge and energy. And again, that just screams NDEs to me.
Yep.
So many
That's how I feel when I take mushrooms.
Getting closer to nature.
Right?
He is taken to what he calls a crystal sea. He explains it as like an expansive, shimmering ocean of glass, and all the stars and galaxies in the universe are reflecting in it. And a lot of people theorize that like maybe he's in some kind of like cosmic observatory. Again, kind of screams NDE. Like a lot of people have said like they're able to like zoom completely out, and then when they think of something, they fly into that position and are there instantaneously. It's like an interdimensional map that you can like just think of.
That would be wild. So like one of the most intriguing parts of his journey, other than, you know, the interdimensional map that he can just fucking access, is his encounter with the Book of Life. And Enoch describes it as a vast record of every human who has ever lived, with every action that they've ever taken has been written into like what seems like an infinite database. So it's literally who you are, what you've ever done in your entire life, probably what you've said in this massive book database. But instead of paper or scrolls, he sees intricate symbols, almost like moving script or code, that reveal the thoughts, actions, and emotions of every soul. So it's literally a database of souls, pretty much.
Again, it just conjures images of DEs and astral projection and all those things.
So he realizes that this book, for just lack of a better term, holds humanity's deeds and is part of some divine order, tracking and storing every moment in time. It is almost too much for him to grasp. And I say almost, it is just too much.
Yeah, no, that would be so much. Like you were literally seeing history.
And maybe just in his context, but I'm wondering if he saw the future too, like just saw it all. Like, but maybe in his context, like he couldn't even fathom seeing forward. He just assumes he's seeing things that happened.
Yeah. Oh man, either way that would fuck with like everything.
Head blown up.
So then, after he tries to wrap his head around literally seeing every moment in time, he meets these things called the Watchers. And these beings who come into Earth, they come to Earth to guide humanity pretty much, but something about their demeanor is different. They seem very burdened, as if they've crossed a line or committed like a huge sin. So when they talk to Enoch, they're almost pleading, aware that they've upset the balance of the universe. So they know that they fucked up and they're trying to like plead with him for like help. So they tell him how they're, they were actually angels, but who were originally sent to Earth to help humanity, like I said a second ago. And they were sent there to help us, but they weren't supposed to like actually like intervene and like show us how to do things, but these guys did. So they taught us things like agriculture, astronomy, medicine, and then like pretty much everything to like elevate the human race. And there's a little saying from Genesis chapter 6, verse 1 through 4. When people began to multiply on the face of the ground and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans who bore children to them, these were the heroes that were old warriors renowned. So pretty much, like Gilgamesh, any other demigod character from mythology. We touched on the Nephilim when we did like our giants episode.
They have come up quite a few times in other topics. As these Watchers grew closer to the humans, they couldn't resist becoming more and more involved, and they started sharing knowledge that humanity wasn't supposed to be privy to, like weapon making. They knew they had crossed the line when they started taking human wives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that was like their big sin, like because they weren't supposed to do that.
I'm thinking about what you read earlier with the Genesis 6:1. Like, just the text is so weighted against women. They noticed they were fair. Okay. What? So leave
I'm
them
not
the
wearing
fuck
this
alone.
for you.
My God.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah, so the Watchers are almost tragic figures in this whole deal. They do regret what they've done, and they're also aware of the enormity of their actions. They ask Enoch to plead with the Most High on their behalf, hoping for mercy, because they know they have created a massive imbalance.
So it's almost like he's like their heavenly lawyer, but he's from Earth, or he'd be like more of a mediator.
Yeah, I mean, they are grasping at straws.
He almost sounds like a little brother that just doesn't know that dad and mom are really pissed off right now. So like big siblings like, hey, I want ice cream for dinner. Why don't you go in there and just be really nice and just ask mom and dad if we got ice cream for dinner? Knowing that like as soon as he goes in there, like mom and dad are gonna just turn around and scream at him.
Just lose their minds.
They're just setting Enoch up.
So yeah, his role isn't just obviously a passive observer, just la-di-da, I'm in heaven. This is fucking, my mind has been shattered so many times. He's almost like a cosmic diplomat, and he's there to pretty much witness, understand, and deliver a message back to God. So, but the gravity of what he's experiencing, the entire realms of existence, beings who live on a different plane, the whole thing is overwhelming. And like I said, it probably just shattered this poor guy's mind.
150%. Like I couldn't even,
I couldn't even comprehend that.
we can't wrap our heads around like astral travel. And this guy's like conversing with the most divine spirits and beings in the world. So he's actually taken to a place he calls the heavens beyond the heavens, where there's even more powerful beings who have absolutely no physical form. These beings just seem to be like pure energy and thought, even beyond the angels and the Watchers. It's here where Enoch is shown the secrets of the stars and the movements of the planets and the very structures of time itself. I don't know how much we get into this, but he mentions in the book that like even the heavenly bodies, the planets and the stars, have their cosmic role and like they're almost like heavenly assignments and are doing what they're not just stationary things that are not part of the whole story, which is kind of crazy too.
Yeah, it's like astrology, but like on roids.
Yeah, it goes back to the law of one.
Yeah.
I try to limit my amount of talk.
So imagine trying to process all of that. He's being shown the inner workings of just the universe, that's all. Something that is way beyond our human mind's comprehension. I can't even speak, it's just so it's too much.
Can't even comprehend.
So I can't comprehend. So it's no wonder that when Enoch eventually comes back to Earth, he writes down absolutely everything that he has seen, almost as if he's trying to make sense of it all for himself as well as future generations.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's just trying to furiously write this before like his brain just turns to fucking mush of like, what just happened?
It's fucking wild. Like just everything all at once.
Yeah,
And,
it's like
and then they're
literally
just like turn you around and just go back.
just go. Yeah, you saw nothing. It's literally a cosmic crash course in the mysteries of existence, and he's one of the few who gets to see it all firsthand. And you know, whether either it be divine or something beyond our understanding, he's forever changed by what he's seen. So he's he's changed. He wrote 108 chapters, and he's got 3 books.
He's a better writer than George R.R. Martin.
At least he can finish something.
Exactly.
But this is just the start of the story. Like we still have to get into the Nephilim, and it's so thick. So you guys ready to talk about some Nephilim? Some bastard angel children?
Always. When am I not?
Right? So these guys are crucial to the chaos that leads to the flood, you know, the great flood from Noah's Ark and stuff like that. And they also form one of the most intriguing parts of the whole Enoch story, essentially. It's pretty much, I'd say it's the bread or the butter of it.
Yeah, so the name Nephilim comes from the Hebrew word meaning fallen ones or giants. They're described as part human, part divine, the literal offspring of heaven and earth. Basically, they're huge, powerful, and a bit too intense for the mortal realm.
Yeah,
Sounds like a frat house.
pretty much.
Yeah.
But they weren't just like metaphorically big. They were literal giants, towering over humans. They had superhuman strength. They were super smart. Some accounts describe them as warriors and even intellectuals. But one thing was clear is that they weren't your average neighbors.
Oh, damn. So, like, yeah, when I was doing the research the other day, I found one article or one thing, and it said, like, the Nephilim were, like, 300 L long, and I was like, what the fuck is an L? Well, it turned out to be what Europeans called a cubit, so it's just like your forearm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, well, how many? And I finally figured out a Google conversion. It was like 300 L's to feet. These things were allegedly over 1,100 feet tall.
That's
That's
very
a
big.
giant. That's
Yeah.
a fucking giant.
Yeah.
Like, is that the size of like a blue whale?
I don't even know. That's probably bigger than a blue whale. 1,100 feet.
Yeah, like, oh,
That's a
like
lot.
I couldn't even imagine like that walking around on the earth.
No, they're just heads in the clouds.
Be 5 foot
No.
tall, motherfucker. But yeah, according to Enoch, these Nephilim quickly spiraled into violence and greed. They developed a taste for human flesh, which we've heard time and time again from giants. Even
Feet
like
5 foot
recently,
tall.
yeah, like in Native American folklore, they talk about man-eating giants and stuff like that.
When we talk about the cave in Grand Canyon, where
Giant
they found the
doorway.
giant bones and all that.
The Kandahar giant.
Yeah, giants are a valid mystery that like a lot of people just want to close the book on and be like, oh, they're completely fake, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You got megaflora all in our past. You got two-toed sloths the size of 3-story houses and hobbit people. Like,
Yeah.
there's all different sizes of everything at all different times. Like, there were definitely people that were bigger than this at some point.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, these guys were just basically super predators. I mean, they're like, what's gonna fucking take down something that's 1,100 feet tall?
Yeah, imagine humans, us, gigantic, running around the planet, just ripping up the resources, eating everything, and then you're just like, what's left? Oh, the little ones of us. Let's go get them.
Right. It just
Yeah.
reminds me of that Rick and Morty episode where they have
Yeah.
like escaped their their home, and they go to tiny planet, and
Yeah.
everything is just super tiny.
I picture the giants like grabbing humans and like popping them like the bones out like you do like a wing. Like, well, if they're that big, they're like,
by the arm, and you just twist.
no. Well, we're just
Yeah.
meat sacks. We're not really held together well.
We're very fragile. We're fragile.
All right, where were we? Oh yeah, terrible neighbors and house guests.
Yeah.
They eat
Super
you when the
predators.
chips are gone.
Yeah, pretty much. And so the presence of these Nephilim pushed humanity to the brink. Yeah, no shit. They were fucking eating us. And they became so destructive and unstoppable that they forced a divine intervention. Like God was just like, yo, like you're done. You're fucking done. So according to the Book of Enoch, their violence reached a level where God just decided the earth just needed to be unplugged, wait 5 seconds, and plug it back in.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Right. I feel like that it's just like my computer. It just stays at the loading screen forever and ever and ever.
Never. Nope. It's broken. We need a new
That's
one.
it. New one. But yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, this, like we said at the top of this story is long. It weaves its way through so many different areas of truth and myth that we can sit here for months and probably never actually come back around to finishing a thought on this whole thing. That being said, this is officially now going to be a two-parter.
Our first two-parter.
So we will wrap up the rest of Enoch's journey. We're going to talk more about like the implications and the theories. I guess there's really not that much to talk about because we're going to see you in a little while for the next episode, right guys?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh man, I can't wait. Ancient aliens, floods, the Younger Dryas.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a lot to talk about. So I really think pacing ourselves for this one is going to be the way to go so we don't feel like we're
Just
bumping up
slogging.
against the wall and running out of time.
Rush.
I
Yeah.
hope our listeners appreciate that because I mean I enjoy going into depth and kind of going on our little tangents. I don't think it'd be as much fun if we didn't.
Yeah, it can't be serious all the time.
Yeah. Other than that, everyone should know the deal by now. Subscribe, like, follow, rate us on Spotify and iTunes. That's actually a big help.
Yeah.
That'll get us into some other people's feeds. Tell your grandma,
Yes.
tell your grandpa, tell your neighbor,
Your
tell
dog,
someone. Yeah, tell your dog. I'm sure your dog's got a cell phone. It's 2024, right?
Right? And if you want to be a
Right.
guest on our show, email us at SSOSpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell for all the notifications.
Ding. All right, strangers. We will be back shortly for part 2 of the Book of Enoch.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to join us as a guest, suggest a topic, or have a story you want us to share, email us at SSOSpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on social media. And don't miss out on the fun. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, thank you for listening to the Secret Society of Strangers podcast. This show is an independent production, researched and crafted by our passionate team. But we couldn't do it without all of you. We truly appreciate your support. Embrace the unknown, for not all secrets are meant to be kept. Farewell, strangers.